On this episode of the Layover Live, Paul Mcleod stops by to talk about digging into your data. Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to episode 187 of the Layover Live. I'm Jason Swick, VP of Strategy and Insights here at SimpleView, and thank you once again for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today. Now, we have often said over the last 2 years that DMOs are drowning in data, often with little to no insights that lead to true action. Now, with data coming from dozens and dozens of sources across marketing performance, survey data, meetings, economic data, and many, many others, it can be an absolutely daunting task to really stitch all of these sources together to truly understand consumer behavior and the overall impact of marketing efforts on your visitor economy. Now, although there are some, DMOs don't really have many resources available to them to help answer some questions we'd all like to know. Things like, how does my website engagement compare to the industry? How am I doing organically with traffic against other destinations as a whole, or even within my own region? Is my marketing leading to arrivals within my destination? And who is even visiting my destination at all? And which of my marketing channels is the most effective at driving visitation? That's just some of the many questions out there. Now, destination marketers are looking to answer these sorts of questions and really turn marketing and meetings data into reliable, actionable insights that lead to better decision making. And to talk about 3 resources that are available to all of you as DMOs today to help answer some of these insights as well, I am joined by Paul Mcleod, Director of Analytics at SimpleView. So Paul, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going, Jason? Glad to be here once again. How's it going?
Yeah, going really well, man. I feel like I'm seeing a lot of you lately, right? We traveled together at ESCO recently and been on the road. And
yeah, DI,
hope, yeah, all the conference season is among us, right? So good to have you here as well. And I know we want to kind of get into talking about some data resources because that's been a big theme at all these conferences that we've been attending, and really point out again some resources that are available for DMOs. We've got 3 to share today, so I want to kind of jump into the first one. As we're discussing, trying to get more insights from data and things of that nature. And I think one great place for DMOs to start at is with SimpleView's very own Visitor Insights Hub. So maybe, Paul, could you talk a little bit about what that is and what's included with that, and even maybe talk about what's also available beyond that inside of our own client portal?
Yeah, this is something we did starting during the pandemic, right there in the spring of 2020. When the question was, if you looked at any individual DMO site, you would see a massive drop off in traffic in that March-April period. And we wanted to see, well, what's going on with the industry as a whole? What's the context? Is anybody okay? What are the actual metrics? What are the benchmarks for this strange period? And so what we did is we started collecting Google Analytics data from all of the sites that we have access to, which, thanks to our wide footprint in the DMO space, that means at the time it was almost 300. Now we're almost 400 different DMO websites that we have access to their universal analytics for. And so with that, we're able to collect a number of important benchmarks, averages, totals, that kind of thing that focus on the DMO industry only. I know you've heard this, Jason, especially on the paid side. There are lots of tourism and travel benchmarks out there for digital marketing, but none of them out there are really DMOs only, because we're our own strange little niche in the world. And so we wanted to publish some of those. So one of the first things we did was we started collecting just basic sessions data. How many people are our sites reaching each day? And when we started doing that in the middle of the pandemic, we found out, on all sessions, we dropped like 60% of traffic or more in that first month. And on the organic search side, it was even worse, something like 70 or 80%. But then we found, that was not too surprising to find out at the time, that nobody was coming to DMO sites during that. But so we put that stuff up on the SimpleView Inc. Data Insights portal. So if you just go to Google and you Google SimpleView Data Insights, that'll be the first link, or you can go to simpleviewinc.com/data-insights-hub-portal. And there you'll see 2 different sets of data that we present. One is the tourism and just the website trends that we talked about collecting at the beginning of the pandemic. We have sessions, organic search sessions, paid search sessions, so the sort of 3 main channels that drive traffic to Dmo sites. And then more on the conversion, or at least referral side, we have data from our formerly Jackrabbit, currently Book Direct referral engine, not a booking engine. And we have info there on how people do searches and things like that. And then also just how often they're doing it. So that's all on the leisure side. Also on the meeting portal side, we have these metrics showing weekly lead volume. So how many leads are coming into Dmos by year, weekly definite volume, same thing by year. So how many leads are actually being booked. And then lastly, cancellations versus new bookings. We publish all those on a weekly basis for free, collected from hundreds of our Dmo clients and then normalized so that we're looking at the same populations all the time. But, leads have been growing a lot year over year. So we're happy to see that. And just generally these free things on the free open site that anybody on the web can access show important information about both on the leisure and on the meeting side, what kind of reach we're having, what kind of just raw volume Dmos are putting out there in their marketing efforts. So yeah, and then that's just the free stuff. You can also log into the portal. And this one, I don't know about you, Jason, but I find that when I tell people about the client portal, they often are like, what? I had no idea that this was even there.
Yep, very true.
I was talking to somebody at Esto and they didn't know anything about it, including that like you can get on user forums there and talk to other SimpleView users about stuff. And then we have our knowledge bases in there, webinars, and you can even access your tickets and everything. Anyway, one thing we have in there, if you log in again at portal.simpleviewinc.com, and if you have any SimpleView service or product, you should have a login there. You'll have a link there to the Dmo Industry Data. And if you click that, it's some of the same databases that we present on the free side, but just a wealth more of information, more data, broken down more ways, presented more ways. So again, looking at on the leisure side, all organic search and paid search sessions, but now breaking it down by how far away from the destination the user is, whether it's a drive market, a fly market, or a local market. Breaking it down by regions, so you can see if there are differences between the Northeast and the Southeast and the West and so forth of the US, which there were very large differences also for Canada. And then we have it broken down also by content in there. So which types of content, events content, things to do content, hotels, homepages, whatever, are actually bringing people into our sites. And then we go on with more of the book direct data, and way more in depth on the meetings data as well, giving you some really great breakdowns on that side, designed by Shimo and her team on 2Synergize here within SimpleView, which if you know them, you know they're the experts on meeting sales within this industry. So we were really happy to have them design some visualizations and some breakdowns for us that they use themselves for their consulting work with clients. And now any of our clients can go see the sort of overall industry averages. We break it down by region, by the size of the convention center in each destination, and give you all kinds of metrics on the leads and the bookings and the cancellations related to all of that.
Yeah, really good stuff there, Paul. I think two great resources available for public and if you're a SimpleView client, right? Definitely the Insights Hub. If you're looking for the quick and dirty on sessions and things of that nature, you've got access that to there.
And we have people who like go there every day and write that number down and then use it in their monthly reports and stuff. So
yeah, absolutely. It's a great resource for that. Board reports, stakeholder reports, whatever it may be, or a presentation maybe you're giving to your local community. Excellent resource for that type of thing. For SimpleView clients, we take it one step further and provide more detailed breakouts and filters that are available to you across sessions, lodging, referral data, which you mentioned, Paul, and meetings data. So excellent there. Go check both of those out. They're really, really good resource available to you that, to your point, probably a lot of folks don't know about, but it's right there at your fingertips and something to look at.
Yeah, I'm always surprised with the client portal, especially. It's really quite a lot of stuff if you want to get in there that you can use to make the case to your stakeholders or whoever about what kind of a job you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, great. That's number one. Great place to start. But let's even look a little further. So a new dashboard that's come out in collaboration with SimpleView and the U.S. Travel Association Destination Council. We worked with Gathan and Paul over there to really put this together, and other folks on the council to really talk about the new DMO Digital Performance Dashboard. This tool really aggregates and I think really helps to synthesize data from participating DMOs across the U.S., which is really nice, and really provides those metrics that really go beyond even what we offer on the Insights Hub. This starts to look more at engagement metrics and starts to look at email marketing metrics across the industry, which is brand new. Something that we showcased very recently at Esto 2022 to a packed room. It's something that is available free also to members of the U.S. Travel Association. Paul, let's talk a little bit about that. Maybe a little bit about how it came about, what type of things are available in terms of metrics, and maybe we'll even provide a link of how to access that. So let's talk about that a little bit as a second resource.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're really excited about this. Loved working with the U.S. travel team on this. They've been really helpful. Like you said, I think Gathan was on maybe the Destinations Council Board of Advisors, I think, which is the sort of, the inner group of destinations that are guiding the destination side of U.S. travel at any time. Anyway, so Gathan from Visit Lexington, who is now actually their Senior Vice President of Marketing, I want to say is his new title.
At DI. Yep.
At DI, yes, sorry.
Yep.
He was just wanting to find a way to to compare his destination's engagement metrics against industry averages. And again, he was looking for DMO only information, which is hard to get out there. Essentially, it doesn't exist because outside of particular people like us and a few other companies that serve this particular niche, it's rare that you have people who are working specifically with DMOs all the time. So he talked to us. We discovered there was a fit there with our access to Google Analytics for hundreds of US DMO sites. So we were able to put together a subset of our industry averages that focuses on the US, which is the majority of them anyway, of course. And we built a nice dashboard that compares your site, or really just at first the idea was just to compile industry averages on session duration, pages per session, and bounce rate, sort of the three main out-of-the-box Google Analytics measures of site engagement. As we were building it, we realized, there's some other things we want to do. First of all, if you're looking at engagement, you absolutely have to isolate the channel that people are coming in on, because you're going to have very different, I'll just use session duration as my, the numbers will differ across the channels, but just your session duration for organic search will be very different from your session duration for display, will be different for direct traffic, social, whatever. It's all going to be very dependent. So that means if you're looking at your whole site session duration and 30% of your traffic is from paid search, and you're comparing it to an industry average where only 5% of the industry traffic is from paid search, you're going to expect to have a different session duration because of that. So really you want to get apples to apples. We present the data for all channels, but I would recommend for most people to switch to the organic search channel. And then you've got a real nice apples to apples comparison of your site versus the industry average. So again, we started with those three metrics. And as I was building it, we decided, hey, let's go ahead and make it possible for people who are in the database to look at their site's data against the industry average right there side by side. And so we were able to do that. We did some extra work with the US travel team, their IT and development people, in order to add a whole field to their database regarding which website each organization has, and then use that to pair up when people log in and look at the dashboard, the data that they're looking at with their domain. And then you can just see right there side by side whether you're above or below the industry average on any of these types of breakdowns. You can look at different date ranges. The data goes all the way back to the beginning of 2019, so almost 4 years at this point. You can filter by to your destination region or just all US DMOs as a whole. And then, like I said, channel. And then the other one that really makes a big difference that we thought was really important to include is device. If you are looking again at session duration, it's going to be twice as high on desktop as it is on mobile, just because of the way that users behave as they look at these things. And so in addition to just having this information available for filtering as you look at the data, we also provide different charts that show how that comparison works across device types. You can look exactly and see for mobile what the difference is in bounce rate versus desktop, and you can see the mix across the industry of how much traffic is coming from those, how much is coming from organic search versus paid search versus all channels, and then break it down by regions as well. So we think that's really exciting on the web engagement side. I honestly, there's almost no other way to be looking at your engagement metrics, I don't think, than to start to use these kinds of benchmarks and then these kinds of ways to slice it to look at different channels and devices. Then on the other side, we're also able to look at the paid search metrics for over 200 different DMO sites. in particular the cost per click and the click-through rate, which are two of the metrics that you help determine how much quality you're getting on your bidding efforts, as opposed to quantity. Quantity, we could show a percentage overall, which we actually do somewhere in the report, but we thought it would be really important to give people an idea of like how much should they even be paying for a click, because honestly, again, especially here with the published public travel industry averages that you see out there, those are including things like hotel clicks that cost they were $5 when I was last looking at it
Way
5 years ago. Yeah, it's probably, you would know there's probably some insane cost for a lot of these things, and DMOs just aren't even competing on those. It would be a waste for a DMO to spend $10 to get somebody to click a hotel keyword and go to a Dmo site where they're probably just going to leave pretty quickly. Whereas for an OTA where they're potentially about to make hundreds of dollars worth of sales, it absolutely makes sense to spend that money to bid on that click. So we wanted to show that context. And then on click-through rate, again, very different CTRs for different kinds of searches. So it made sense for DMOs to get that. And again, you can look at it over time, you can break it down by region, and you can compare your site to the industry averages right there in the charts without going anywhere else. So we think that's really cool. And again, for any date range, going back to 2019. Last thing we had is an email marketing database, which was actually supposed to be phase 2, but we got it out in time for the big public launch. We're really excited about this. Our team has been wanting this. I'm building tools for our internal team to use for their analysis with all this info. But we are able to show 7 or 8 different email marketing metrics, including all of the good ones. Open rate, which is, as you know, becoming less valuable in the current iOS privacy scheme. But we have it. We have click to open rate. We have click-through rate, opt-out rate. And we also have a few more: bounce rate, spam complaint rate, and I don't know, what's the other one, Jason?
You got it. Regardless, it's a lot of metrics, right?
Yeah, we've got all the metrics, all the standard metrics you have for email. And what we think is really important about this also, you can do the date ranges again. But what we think is really important is you can break it down by the audience. So we give you 4 options sort of at the top level. We've got consumer, so that's leisure emails going out to all your leisure travelers who've signed up to receive your email newsletter. We've got media and PR, obviously a distinct audience there, the people who you're trying to get to write about your destination or promote it or influence about it somehow. Member partner, where you're communicating with your local tourism businesses. That's honestly where most DMO emails go, is to them, both the number of campaigns and number of recipients. Even with the size of consumer email databases, most individual email opens and so forth happen with members and partners. And then lastly, planners. And so these are the people, of course, that we're selling our meeting space and sports event space to. And so then within planners, we even have it broken down further between meeting sales, sports sales, group tour and travel, and a couple of others. But this, I think, is what really makes these metrics useful, because when you look at these metrics, whether it be click to open rate or click-through rate or whatever, huge differences between consumers versus media versus planners. And then even within planners, huge differences between meeting sales versus sports sales versus group tour travel. So you can't really analyze your campaigns unless you have this kind of detailed breakdown of the metrics to see what kind of different behaviors you can expect from the people you're sending it to.
Yeah, Paul, really good insights. Thanks for sharing that. Again, this is a really exciting project to work on, because we got to work collaboratively, help solve a challenge that the council was facing about getting pure DMO data, being able to offer some of this beyond what's offered on SimpleView's Insights Hub, to be able to dig into engagement, look at that, being able to parse it by device, looking at things across paid search, and then for the first time ever, being able to do that across email marketing, as you talked about, with a disruption around open rates and things of that nature, which is actually going to be a future episode we'll be doing with the market automation team, talking a little bit about that as we've tracked some of that data as well. It's really an exciting dashboard and something that everyone should be really excited about, being a U.S. travel member, to be able to have access to something like this. And then also for the U.S. travel team to have the foresight to bring this to fruition, working with us on this, powering it from behind, is something that I'm really, really, really excited about. Imagine this is going to grow over time. Naturally, as we are moving into Google Analytics 4 and things of that nature, we'll start to pivot and adjust these things accordingly.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a really good question. I
yeah.
got that. I've gotten that a few times. We are already collecting the data from GA4, and we will switch over to it, at some point before the official GA4 switchover next summer. So we are prepared for that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We still have some time, 9 or so months away for that. So we've got plenty of time for that, but it is something that's on our radar, something we're mindful of. But at minimum, this dashboard, as well as some of the other things that US Travel is providing, again, are great resources, right? So first resource, looking at Simple View Insights Hub, super awesome there. And in our client portal, don't forget the client portal. Next, wanting to pull back some more engagement type or email marketing metrics across the landscape for US, take a look at US Travel's DMO dashboard there, something that we just launched again at Esto. It's another great resource. And then lastly, I want to get into something for those folks that want to really take a deeper dive, Paul. We have a solution for that as well. And really, that's our visitor insights reporting. So this is for those folks that really want to get in there, get their hands dirty, and learn more about how their marketing efforts are really impacting arrivals to their destination. So really, visitor insights is a way to kind of unify multiple data sources, things like Google Analytics, geolocation data, economic data, meetings data, and a whole bunch of other stuff to really help DMO better understand their destination's visitor and how their marketing efforts are really impacting their overall visitor economy. So you were really instrumental in putting this together, working alongside our friend Aaron Nissen, who's now with Discover LA, and really starting to spearhead this and put this in place. I think it's something that's really important for DMOs. As we sent out our the State of Digital Marketing survey in late spring this year, one of the top challenges for DMOs was really helping to show the impact of their marketing efforts. And data is one way to be able to do that. So let's talk about Visitor Insights reporting, Paul, as this third and last kind of resource that it is not free, unfortunately, but it is something that provides tremendous value to DMOs and something that the DMO should ask about. But I want you to provide a little bit more insight into what this can do for a DMO to really help them show the impact of their marketing.
Yeah, this is, I think, one of the more cool and complicated things that I've had a chance to work on here at SimpleView. In a lot of ways, the first project that really moved me over to the data side more hardcore. But it's been a little bit of a long development process because we wanted to be really careful and get a lot of feedback working with our customers to figure out exactly how to combine and blend all this data in the best possible way and present it. But essentially, Visitor Insights is our attempt to use not just cell phone location data on people in your market, but sort of building a whole bunch of things around and into that data, using the location data as the backbone to get as many insights as we can from your other data sources as well. And like you said, it's really about trying to find insights into who's actually coming into your destination, what they're actually physically doing while they're there. I think one of the main reasons we're excited about being able to do this for people is we've talked to a number of destinations that have tried to jump into the location services data thing, just buying the raw data themselves from one of the vendors out there. Mm-hmm. And what they often find is that it's just completely unwieldy. It's not impossible to get in there, but you get just a big, huge CSV of data, which, depending on the size of your destination, might be too big for you to even open in the memory on your computer. So you might need some other tools to be able to actually query and analyze the data. And then even on top of that, physical computer hardware problem, it's just a lot of different info and a lot of different breakdowns you have to do, and it's always getting updated. So, every month you have to reincorporate the next spreadsheet into your previous ones in order to get updated charts and everything. So what we really like about Visitor Insights, it's a way for us to have a lot of these breakdowns and visualizations and analyses already built out, ready to accept new data on a regular basis when it comes in, and then go ahead and compare that to your other data sources over and over again, so you can make the case at any time to your stakeholders about the value of your marketing efforts. So some of the things we do with this is we, just to explain cell phone location data, if you haven't talked to one of the vendors, and I mean, if you have been to any DMO conference that I've been to, the location services data vendors are there and trying to help you out with this info. But basically, they have deals with different apps out there that collect users voluntarily given GPS info, and then those the terms of service of those apps allow them to share the anonymized version of that data with the companies that we then get it from. And those companies give us nice reports on which devices were seen in your destination where those devices were from, how long they were there, and then we can even start to geofence not just your destination, but particular points of interest or attractions. So that could be hotels, it could be major stadiums and arenas, the convention center. It can even be individual Airbnbs or other little blocks of anything that can be drawn on a map. We can draw it, we can see who went there, and then we can see, where people went between those different spots within your destination to get some insight into how people are moving around it. So some of the basic things we do is we look at how many people are coming from elsewhere besides the living in or very near the destination and spending the night. We look at how long they're there. We look at the day trip visitors. How long are those people there? And then we're able to look at it by day and compare those things, look at it year over year, break things down by how many days they have, which can be very interesting, and also look at things like, okay, so we see these people, we see how long they're here. Which people were ever seen spending a night in a hotel room? Okay, well, now we have an estimate of how many hotel visits we can see, how many hotel overnight stays, how many people were seen in an Airbnb. Okay, so now we have an estimate of that. And if we back those two things out of the overall total overnight visits, then we have VFR visits, visiting friends and relatives, which is, of course, a market that DMOs have often struggled to quantify, because we can get reports from Star or maybe even from our hotels themselves. We can get reports on Airbnb data from AirDNA or various other vendors of that information. But obviously nobody's really recording in any centralized regular capacity how many people are coming to stay with their friends or their parents or whatever in a destination, contributing to the economy, going out and doing stuff, buying food, enlivening the nightlife scene. But we just have no idea what those numbers are. So now we can at least get an idea of like what percentage of the total market that is, which is really exciting. We can do lots of other breakdowns. I don't want to ramble about all of them, but we can break it down by the location of where the user is from. And we can do some really cool stuff, I think, with putting a pixel on the site of the Dmo, seeing which devices trigger that pixel, even breaking it down by which channels they come from, or which different actions they do on the site, and then looking at, okay, which of those devices that did these things on the website actually then subsequently show up in the destination. And that's really cool, because that's a real measure of people we influenced with our websites that then actually did show up at a later time. We can look at the window of time between when they looked at the site and when they showed up, how many times they had to look at the site before they did it, and get lots of different insights into how we're able to market to different source markets with our website that way. In addition to this, we like to compare the device data to Star data if it's available, so we can just get a check on how reasonable and accurate we're being. We like to compare it to your CRM data, which of course we have access to if it's the SimpleView CRM, and see, which nights were we supposed to be sending big groups to the local hotels, and do we see more device nights during that time? And then also doing it another way, looking at the CRM data in combination with the location services data to measure the effect of your convention center. So one of my absolute favorite reports, we take a look in your CRM, we look at all the dates of all the events that we have there. Then we look at which devices we see in the convention center during those days, and we see which hotels they went to on the nights during, before, and after that event. And that way we're able to get a real measure, a real estimate anyway, of the kind of effect that the convention center event with the meeting sales and event planning and everything there actually impacts various lodgings in the destination. Even those that weren't necessarily on the lead, didn't necessarily respond to the RFP for that particular event, we can still now capture, or at least get a directional effect and some degree of magnitude on how many people are going to these various hotels. So for me, I think that's really exciting. Just various ways to collect what Visitor Insights really does that none of these other things really do, is it sort of collects things that people do in your destination where they're traveling, and they might not be ever tracked or traveled in any other way because they never talk to any official vendor that anybody would know about, especially the VFRs. These are people whose impact might be significant on attractions and restaurants and so forth, but you would never possibly know that they came from out of town without this kind of analysis. So I think it's a really important way for DMOs to sort of fill in the gaps of the effects that their marketing are having on actual visitation in their destination.
Yeah, Paul, excellent, all excellent stuff. You and I could sit here probably and talk for 2 hours about visitor insights reporting, what it has to offer, and being that you've been so ingrained in it from the get-go. But DMOs are looking to tell their story beyond the click, and that's something that we're moving towards, right? Budgets are under scrutiny more than they've probably ever been. We're resource challenged more than we've ever been. And so we want to make sure that we are as effective as possible with our marketing efforts. And this is one way to do that. This has so many exciting things that can happen. And it's also worth mentioning too, that this stuff it's anonymized also. It's all consensual type data that we're collecting. And we're tracking behaviors, not people. And so I think
and we're tracking groups, not individuals, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like cohorts, right? And so same thing I will mention with the other two resource that we mentioned as well too, that it's all anonymized. No one else sees your data but you. We're just tracking that that behavior as a whole, which I think is important. So really 3 good things that we went over today. SimpleView Insights Hub, and again, if you're a SimpleView client, you have even more behind the client portal. The DMO dashboard that we recently launched in collaboration with the U.S. Travel Association and the Destinations Council, which was presented at ESTO this year. And then also our own visitor insights reporting. If you're really looking to see how your marketing efforts really contribute to your visitor economy, definitely want to reach out to Paul and I, and we can set up a demo and walk you through some of that. And we'll provide some links to some of those things as well below. Lastly, Paul, in parting, as we wrap things up, I wanted to ask you and just maybe get some advice for DMOs, whether it's about leveraging data or maybe KPIs or whatever, to help drive marketing success. Any advice you want to leave anybody with?
Yeah, I think the main thing is just that particularly on the digital marketing side, I think benchmarks are just absolutely critical. And that's why we keep coming up with new databases. I mean, there's some things we didn't even talk about here that I want to potentially put on the client portal soon, like industry averages from Google Search Console, which has information on things like keyword rankings that are in some ways even more fundamental than organic search traffic, because the pandemic will stop people from searching for DMOs and take away, like I said, 70 to 80% of our organic search traffic, but it may not actually change the rankings at all. So you're going to get very different signals from these things and learn different insights and make different actions based on them. So there are I think focus on if you want to be making good marketing decisions, focus on putting yourself in the context of relevant benchmarks and averages and aggregates that apply to you as a DMO, because you don't really know if you're up 10% on traffic or down 10% on traffic. Let's say you're up 10% right now. If you were telling me that in March of this year, I would have said, wow, you're kind of lagging behind the industry there. That's too bad, because we were growing that well. If you told me that now, I'd say, hey, you're one of the best sites in the whole industry with that same 10% growth. You're doing great. Keep doing what you're doing. So you absolutely can't even figure out where you are and how well you're doing without that kind of benchmark. Also, I get questions about people setting goals all the time. I would encourage anybody who's setting a goal for something like website sessions to do it as lightly as possible. And because there are things, as we all saw in the past couple of years, that will completely prevent you from hitting your goal that are entirely beyond your control sometimes, for something like web sessions. But if you're doing it, you got to know, it's very interesting to you right now. And I've been in conversation with clients who are trying to set a website sessions goal for next year. These people want to know things like, how high should it be? And, 3 months ago, I would have said, hey, we're growing 30% every day on organic search, expect great things for the foreseeable future. Now we've been down 20, 25% some days in the past month. And, I've been much more moderate. I'm still not going to project that 2023 will have negative growth for organic search, but I'm going to be much more moderate in my expectations of how high that growth is going to be. So without these benchmarks, I don't think you can either make smart marketing decisions about evaluating your own efforts and how good you're doing, how well you're doing now. Think about cost per click on the paid side, absolutely same type of thing. And you also can't make a good case to your stakeholders about whether you're doing a good or a bad job. I think we've all probably seen a case where a board member just wants to bear down on somebody or some other, high-powered person, and they'll just hammer on things. And if you don't have benchmarks and so forth to give context for your performance, you may find that you don't have perfect answers for all the things that somebody can come at you with. But if you can look and say, hey, no, we're 5%, we're 25% better than the industry, this is good performance in this context. That really gives you a lot better of a leg to stand on when you're trying to argue for budgets and personnel and all those sorts of things. So that would be my main thing is, look for ways to find context and make your numbers make sense and be useful.
Yeah, great advice, Paul, and insight there. Benchmarks, to your point, it's absolutely critical and important, right? It's kind of the CYA thing, right? In some ways, it allows you to measure things properly, or just know, hey, am I winning or losing?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not just CYA. It's also like for me, like, am I doing a good job? Like I said, it may be different depending on how the industry is going.
No, you got it. And we saw that even back in, if you think back to 2015 when we saw dips in organic traffic because of things that were happening with SERPs and things of that nature at that time. If we didn't have that industry information to share with our SEO clients at that time, those would have been really difficult conversations to have. But because at that time we had the internal benchmark data, we were able to arm them to have the proper conversations where 3% down may have been good at that time compared if the industry was 20% down. But you never would have known it if you didn't have something to compare it to. So yeah, really good insights there. And I appreciate you sharing that, Paul.
Absolutely.
You bet. And thanks for coming on. I really do appreciate it. Anytime we have any of these data sessions, they're always podcasts that are a little bit longer, but I think they're so informative. And it's something that when Paul and I were talking, we're just wanting to bring this to front and center, I want to say, for some of the things that were available to DMOs, because we still get questions about, hey, I didn't know that was available or this was available. So providing these resources to you, 2 of them are free, one's paid for. They're all important depending on what level you're at and what you need to be able to accomplish. So really, really important stuff. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you're not subscribed, please do so now. We're also available through podcasts on audio, through Spotify and iTunes. So we'll see you next time and have a great day.